can see me and Dad got the door off the truck, and wouldn't you know it, it's pretty rusty. So I think the plan is Holly and Summit, they sell a lower panel kit that comes up somewhere in here. And I wouldn't have been that worried about it. I'd already started cutting in it, but I just don't have anything good to weld to. All this, which I wish I had a better light, you can see all the porosity, or not even porosity, all just the oxidation in it. Let's see if I can grab a light. So, yeah, that's much better. You can see all the oxidation in the bottom of it. Well, all this is getting painted, and you're going to see that. I understand it's under the door, but the thing is, if I've got to fix any of this, you can see the pinholes in it and that big rust hole there. All this front corner's rusty, so we decided for the little cost as it did the lower door, it was much easier just to buy it and put it on. I've got the door all basically stripped down. Main thing was getting all of the old seam sealer out of the corners, and so I don't plan on taking the whole door to bare metal. I just need to get all that old sealer out. That way it's got good adhesion for the paint. But anyway, so I've got it all pulled down, or stripped down. Not too terribly bad the rest of the way around the door. Everything looks pretty good. I still gotta get the latch out and get all that cleaned up. But main thing is the lower doors just showed up. So I'm getting ready to unbox those and see what we got and start marking out for the bottom. I didn't really worry about cleaning up the bottom because of getting it all cut out. So I'm getting ready to unbox and see what we got, see how big of a deal it's going to be to get these cut out. Hopefully it's not too bad. Well, would you look at that? It basically installed itself. No, but really, actually looks really good. Pretty happy with how straight it is, and the bottoms look good. So don't think it should be too big of a deal. They give you plenty of extra meat on the sides to either spot weld it or see if you can tuck it up in the seams like the factory. I don't know what I'm going to do about the edges just yet, but I'll kind of get closer to that. Right now I'm game planning where and how much I'm going to cut out. The only thing I am going to do is, fortunately all these vents are still good and they don't actually cut out the vents, so I got to decide if I'm going to cut in that seam or if I'm going to cut here and down. But I want to keep all these factory vents so I don't have to worry about cutting them out. So going to kind of make a little weird notch there, but all the vents are good. It's got the holes. I got to figure out what those screws go to, but I'll just take all that apart. That's not a big deal. So plan is to start marking out and get all this cut out. All right, so that was pretty simple. I kind of got a rough outline. I'm going to try to stay about a 1/2 inch lower than what the panel measures. That way I don't run into any issues like I did on the floor pan and have a little bit of gap. And I may even cut, just a little bit below it. But my plan, there's a couple options. I could stay at the bottom. I could cut here, go down, stay at the bottom and run across. My only reasoning for coming up as high as I am is because the door panel comes down right here. And I know I'm going to have to, when I butt weld it, I'm going to have to skim coat it a little bit with a filler and make it, nice and flat. But the bottom of that door panel may cover up a lot of this because you can see where the black outline is. This, just to give a rundown on this black and why it's orange and black and everything else, we didn't paint this truck. Like I said, if you haven't seen any of the other ones, we bought this truck, or Dad, anyway, we got this truck about a year ago, and the previous owner let it sit outside. It was an old work truck. They hauled junk around in it. The bed was always full of stuff. And long story short, this truck was primered at some point in its life, and it was originally primered black, but the truck had sat out so long that the outside faded to gray. But that's why all this is black. So that's kind of the rundown on that. But anyway, so my plan is to stay, you know, up here. That way when the door panel comes down, if there is any imperfections, which there shouldn't be, it'll kind of get covered up with the door, and having a good flat line is going to be easier to weld to. So that's kind of my thing there. Obviously, all this has to be right anyway, so it doesn't really matter. There's not going to be anything. It's going to be easy to weld here and here than it will be like in this groove and keep this consistent body line here, you know, this radius, because if I weld that in, you'll see it and it'll be a raised spot where it's welded. So anyway, I'm trying to take the easiest route around here, and then unfortunately where the hinges are on this side, I had to take a look, and there's a bracket on the inside that ties both of these together, and it's spot welded in. So I don't want to cut that bracket. So I've got to come down, and you can see where I'm coming around and out. Now, once I get this out, I may trim it a little bigger and resize some stuff, because I don't know if it's going to be easier to weld this or go on this side and weld it here. I'll kind of figure out what the best route is. So I'm always going to cut small. I can always cut it out bigger. It's hard to, you know, kind of fix that once you've already cut it all out. So that's kind of the route right now. So I'm going to suit up and get ready to cut this out. So I've got it all cut out, and the more you know, that brace is also that brace, and that brace is spot welded to the outside. So I guess the plan is to drill the spot welds out, because I don't want to cut this brace out. And it's spot welded here, here, and then on the back side over here. So I didn't realize that, or I mean, the thing is, I couldn't have ever done it any different, because I've got to get this piece replaced. This piece is bad, this edge is bad, so all this needs to be replaced. That needs to be replaced because that's all rusted out. All this down here, so I mean, the only difference would have been if I cut it up here or if I cut it down here. I still would have hit this brace. I guess I just wouldn't have I wouldn't have had to worry about this, but it's not a big deal. It is what it is. I didn't realize this brace was back here, but I guess the more you know. And then over here, I got to work on it some more. You can see, had some issues there, but not a big deal. And then I got to get this out from the pinch weld and get it all cut off and get it all pulled out and cleaned up. But we're making progress. So I mean, you can't do anything but start cutting, and then you just figure it all out when you get there. Still using that Amazon spot driller. That's a spring-loaded end. It's just the cheaper one from Amazon. They come with replacement tips. The main thing to keep it from not breaking is use a cut knoll. Whether it's, I mean, it would be better if you actually had an actual cutting oil, but if you use like a light of WD-40 or something, would probably work just as well. Uh-oh. Oh, I missed. But they work really well. You can see it just popped a little center out of it. The hardest part in doing all of this is finding the complete spot weld. I got this one right. I wish I would have recorded it because it was perfect, and then I look silly doing this one because I missed. But anyway, that's basically what I'm doing now. Is just trying to find the divots, just kind of pulling up on it and seeing roughly where it tries to pull apart at, or where it won't pull apart at, but that's going to be the plan. All right, well, the factory spot welds, if you need to know, you can kind of see them. There's one there. They're not that great because really, I drilled that one. You saw me drill that one out. I drilled that one out, got a pry bar in it. It just popped the whole piece out. And so now all this is free, which is nice. And I can get all this cleaned up. And like I said, I only cut a little bit right there, but that's not a big deal. I can always go underneath, tack it up. But I can get all this cleaned up, put some rust converter on it. So none of that's going to be that big a deal. So, and here's what the back side of the door panel looks like. I'm assuming this is just a brace to keep it strong or keep it from rattling. Oh no, this is, oh no. Oh no. That's for the window. Oh boy. So that's the window stop. Yeah, so I'll have to redo that. Okay, so that's the window stop, and then these are the flaps. So when you slam the door, those kind of flap and the truck doesn't explode, if I'm not mistaken. But that I'm gonna have to cut out and put back. So that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. Just if you go to do this, there's extra stuff behind here that you need to take into account. All right, so I've trimmed out a little bit more, kind of cleaned up my edges over here and got the rest of this bottom cut out. And I've wire wheeled the bottom, tried to get all the rust off I can. I've wiped it down, and I'm going to go ahead while I'm still kind of trimming up over here and starting to measure out on the bottom. I'm going to put some rust converter on all the surface rusted spots around the edges of this, and then on that bracket and all there. So just going to use the rust converter, wipe it all down, and let that get to drying while I'm still finishing everything up. Main thing on doing this is making sure your surface is prepped as well as you can. Sometimes it's hard to get, into some of these places, but main thing is prep and wipe it all down with acetone or lacquer thinner or whatever you have. And not much to it. It's Kuro Seal is the brand of it, and I've used it on all kinds of stuff. Ranchero, C10. I think I used some on the Lightning, so it's pretty good stuff. It seems to do pretty well, and the way to know that if you've got it all clean enough is this milky white color will turn to a black color, but if it turns brown, then it means it wasn't clean enough. It still had some contaminants in it. And I think you can leave this as just the top coat or final coat, but you can, I usually paint over the top of it, especially if it's stuff like this here, I probably wouldn't worry about because it's going to be on the inside of the truck. But like if it was like the frame or something like that, I usually shoot a coat of paint over it, and yeah, everything seems to stick so far. So all looks pretty good, but pretty good stuff. I like it. All right, so got the sides all trimmed out and got it mocked up. I probably spent about 45 minutes grinding and trimming, trying to get my fitment as close as I can. I know it doesn't look like it, and it's good. I think it'll turn out just fine. But it's a chore. It's not quite as forgiving as it looks, because it's nothing square with each other, so you can't, like your straight lines down the side, if you cut it straight and you cut it straight on the door, it may, like mine differed. I don't know, it may have just been me. The other thing is, like, everything seems to be lining up like it should, like all the, it's hard to see, but right there is the end of that little radius right there, and that looks good. But the thing is, it looks a little bit long here. Basically all this bottom lip's going to get cut off, but it looks like the little drain holes are going to be real close to this bottom lip of the door. So I'm not going to know until I try. I mean, I can always trim up more, but the problem is, like, this is as high as I can go on this side. Well, it's falling now. But you can see my holes, they line up there. So it's not, I can't go up any higher on this side, and I can't slide it up any higher because I'm hitting that brace at the bottom. So there's a little bit there. So my thinking is, if I'm hitting the bottom of the brace on this side, then I should be good. And it's basically, you know, I know this is a factory edge, but it's basically about the same on both sides. Like I said, that side fell down a little bit, so it looks weird. But I think this will work. So I've got this top marked. I'm going to get it trimmed out and then start trying to make sure everything fits right. I got to remember, I've already got the other, the window stop or brace or whatever. I got it out of the other bottom. And so I'll get it welded in. And then I've got I went and washed and cleaned up that other, the flaps that go on the vents, and get them put in before I weld it all in. But one, just make sure everything fits first. That's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, it's very tedious. I don't want to say I wouldn't suggest it, because especially if your doors were as rusty as these, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier, and you're not going to be cutting out little patches and, you know, filling, you know, doing a whole lot of like skim fill on all that oxidation on the bottom where all the rust was, because you're going to see it through the paint. I mean, you're going to have to put a skim coat, which this is going to get a skim coat too. So it is what it is. It's all on how you want to look at doing it. And you're never going to see the bottom of the door. If you're crawled up underneath the bottom of the door, no, I mean, that is what it is. This is going to be a driver truck, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I also don't want to have to worry about, you know, I also don't want to have to do any of this again. Once it's done, and you don't have to mess with it. This truck will probably never get a paint job on the outside, because we all kind of like the way it looks. So that's kind of where we're at. But anyway, I'm rambling, so we'll get this top cut out and keep going. All right, so got the fitment pretty good along through here. Well, I can't push it down. Anyway, I still got to trim my edges, so that's why everything's a little wonky. The only thing that I'm not super excited about is this fitment is not quite right. We're basically, you know, flush over here, but this is not the right angle. So I guess once I get all this trimmed out, I'll have to get in there and try to pull that back out to it. Everything else looks like it should pull down pretty good, and I'll go ahead and, once I trim these edges and get it a little more fitted a little bit better, I'll go ahead and assemble the vents and put the window brace or window stop back in. But I think that should work pretty good. Like I said, that's the only major fitment issue I've got. Everything else should be workable. So I'm pretty happy with the way this thing fits up. I've got, let's slit a little bit now, but I've got, you can see that gap is a lot more straight. Same thing down there. So once I get it slid over, it's probably slid that way a little bit. I've got this bottom trimmed most of the way out. I got a little bit more trimming here, but being very cautious of doing a little bit at a time, I got to knock that little corner off. Fitment up here is pretty good. My main thing was getting, this corner here as perfect as I can get it. It slides up underneath this side like the factory, and then I'll just kind of spot weld it here in a couple places, and then weld it the rest of the way around, and then same thing down the bottom. Because one around the outside, I'm like 90% sure I'm going to go back and put that sealer, the panel bonder or whatever they used from the factory. I may go ahead and go back around the door. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. If nothing else, I'll do it at the bottom to try to seal up a lot of this. But the fitment is actually pretty good once it pulls down tight. Like I said, the only issue I had was that side didn't line up very well. And this side, the bend, this way here, it matched the door here. So I don't know. But it didn't. Once you pulled this down tight, it would pop this up. So I cut a slit here to be able to pull this down and then pull that down to it. So all that fits pretty good. Like I said, I got to trim up the bottom a little bit more. The sides fit pretty good here, all the way down the bottom, across the top. Then up here fits pretty good. I got a little bit more of a gap than I'd like here, but not awful. Actually, it's pretty good. So pretty happy with the way it is. So I'm going to pull this off, go ahead and assemble, the vent, or put the brace in, put the vents in. I got to fill in that pinhole there, but I'm not welding it in. I'm going to use JB Weld. I'm going to clean it up real good and use JB Weld because I don't want to burn any of the paint off this door is my main thing, and I'm not cutting a patch out, So that's just the way it's going to be. Everything else in the door, on the inside is going to be good, but I'm going to just fix that right there. It should be fine. That's the only pinhole in this door, which I'm pretty excited with. I didn't know, I didn't know if it was going to be full of Bondo or what, but looks like that was the only little pinhole spot here. So I got to go grab some of that, but I'm going to pull this apart and start getting it welded up. So putting on a little bit of final touches. Got the flaps back in, got the brace back on, and shot a little coat of paint on everything, any bare metal spots. I've got JB Weld there to fill in that little pinhole, and shot a little bit of black paint on any bare metal spots I saw. So I think I've done my final fitment, make sure everything fits right, and so I'm about to drop it in and finally get this thing welded in. I think that's how it's going to sit. I'm pretty excited with it. Gaps are all pretty good. Like I said, there's a little bit more of a gap at the top than I'd like, but it is what it is. All this turned out pretty good. I think all that'll work. Like I said, this is the main side that you're going to see when you open the door. So this side is the one that's getting the most attention. Not that the rest of it is not getting, but this side needs to be really, really good. So all those gaps feel pretty good. I'm going to knock this back down, put a couple spot welds in it. Same thing down here. Put a couple little tacks down to the bottom. Like I said, all this is going to get seam sealed. Go ahead. I've got all this kind of lined up where I need it to be. I'll weld down here, weld up here, and weld across, and that's going to be it. That's all she wrote. I'm super excited with how this is turning out, so hopefully I don't mess it up right here at the end. So Alrighty, everything's welded up and ground down pretty well. I'm fairly pleased with how it all turned out. I think it'll work good. This side over here was what I was more particular about. There's a couple little low spots you can see there that I'll have to skim fill, but I mean, it is what it is. I'm not super upset about it. I think it for all intents and purposes, for trying to tuck it all up like the factory did over here and getting everything fitment wise, you know, it's filthy right now, but everything turned out pretty good. So I think I'm gonna call it a day or a night or whatever. Still got some more grinding to do along the top here and fill in any pinholes I can find and go through and skim fill, you know, just skim coat a body filler around the edges, you know, the top edge, down the sides here, make sure everything looks good, finish getting all this cleaned up, get the hinge out and get all that done, make sure everything's good and clean, and get this thing ready for you know, final prep. So like I said, I think I'm gonna call it here for tonight, but got a little bit more work to do, and but pretty happy with the way it turned out. All the fit and finish is good. Like I said, it looks fairly factory again. Like I said, I just tacked a couple places down here that I still got to grind down, and then all this bottom here, at least the bottom, maybe all the way around, will get seam sealed again. So not too big of a deal, because all it was spot welded in a handful of spots anyway from the factory, so it's no different than what they did. So I'm pretty excited with it. It's a chore and a half to get this thing in. It's pretty difficult, I'm not gonna lie, just with all the different shapes in it. I mean, the ranchero quarter panels were difficult, and so were these, so it's not for the faint of heart to do, but pretty excited with it. So I think it'll turn out good enough.